APUSH students everywhere. Hello, and welcome to yet another edition of APUSH Today. My name is Lawrence Chao, and I am a San Marino High School 11th grader currently enrolled in Mr. Peter Paccone's AP U.S. History course. San Marino High School is a small nationally acclaimed public school located just a few miles from the home of the world champion Los Angeles Dodgers. And in today's video, we will be exploring topic 5.3, the Mexican-American War. But what specifically will you need to know about this topic, you're no doubt wondering? Well, the answer to that question can be found in what's called the APUSH Course and Exam Description Learning Objective, with this learning objective now appearing on the screen before you. In other words, by the end of this video, and for the May exam, you'll need to be able to explain the causes and effects of the Mexican-American War. Now, before I begin my presentation on the war itself, I want to take a second and describe for you how I plan to proceed. First, I'm going to describe the Mexican-American War in a single sentence. Then, I'm going to describe some background to the war, focusing primarily on the factors leading up to it. Then, I'll describe the war in detail, then some short-term and long-term effects, followed with a book I've read about the war that was published in 1885. In a nutshell, the Mexican-American War refers to an armed conflict between the United States and Mexico from April 1846 to February 1848, stemming from the United States annexation of Texas in 1845 and from a dispute over whether Texas ended at the Nueces River, which was a Mexican claim, or the Rio Grande, which was the U.S. claim. Now, before describing this war in more detail, I want to describe the factors leading up to the war, the background if you will, stating with the fact that in the early 1840s, there was a Comanche Native American attack on the northern Mexican territories and Mexico being unable to defend against these attacks. As a result, these northern Mexican territories, which today includes the state of California and New Mexico, were not only decimated, but also abandoned in what history has come to call the War of 1,000 Deserts. Mexico, however, still vowed to protect its borders, and so, when Texas left to join the Union, Mexico had had enough and suspended its ties with the U.S. Then, in 1845, as many of you have probably learned already, John O'Sullivan coined the term manifest destiny, a belief that God granted America the control of all land in North America, or the land from the Atlantic to the Pacific between Canada and Mexico. With that thought in mind, President James K. Polk decided to go after the northern Mexican territories, and he decided to use Sullivan's call for manifest destiny as justification for his actions. Polk's first action was directing Secretary of State James Buchanan to tell the merchant Thomas Oliver Larkin, consul for the Mexican province, to encourage influential Californians to rebel. Polk supported this move by sending the Navy to capture San Francisco Bay and other coastal towns. Captain John C. Fremont was sent to Mexico, and he reached the Sacramento River Valley in December of 1845. Polk then sent a secret diplomatic squad called the Slidell Mission to buy California and New Mexico with a budget of $30 million in total. However, this move failed as Mexican officials viewed this action as disrespectful and refused to meet with them. Because of this rejection, Polk decided to speed things up and began to move the army to Mexico. General Zachary Taylor and 2,000 troops were sent to the land from the Nueces River to the Rio Grande. The war began in May 1846 when the Mexican army attacked Taylor's army. There was overwhelming support for the war, with only the Whigs wanting peace. American forces were vastly superior, and Taylor's army crossed the Rio Grande and took Matamoros in September 1846. Within 2 months, a U.S. naval squadron in the Gulf of Mexico seized Tampico, Mexico's second most important naval city. This shut off their ability to obtain support and goods from outside countries. By 1846, the U.S. had already taken much of Mexico. The Battle of Buena Vista was one of the most famous battles in the Mexican-American War and took place from February 22nd to 23rd, 1847. The outcome of the battle was ambiguous, with both sides claiming victory. The small group of U.S. volunteers managed to hold off what they believed was a larger, well-supplied, and better-trained Mexican army. Another famous battle was the Siege of Veracruz, a 20-day siege of the Mexican key beachhead seaport of Veracruz that started on March 9, 1847, and ended on March 29, 1847. It was the first large-scale amphibious assault by the U.S. and resulted in the capture of the city and the eventual capture of Mexico City. After that, General Scott immediately made plans to march inland, eventually capturing and occupying the Mexican capital in September of 1847. The war ended with both parties signing the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in early 1848. The treaty resulted in Mexico, in exchange for only $15 million, Mexico ceding 55% of its territory to the U.S. In other words, as a result of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, a short-term effect was that the United States gained all or parts of present-day Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. As for one long-term effect, it was that the Mexican-American War showed that America was a force to be reckoned with on an international scale, that it was not afraid to take what it wanted. As for another long-term effect, it was that many English-speaking settlers and migrants moved into the acquired territories, if only in search of minerals, natural resources, and an access point to the Pacific Ocean. And as for one more long-term effect, it was that as English-speaking people moved into the newly acquired territories, the slavery debate grew in volume, as Congress debated which of the new states would be able to own slaves. This debate culminated in the Civil War. One other interesting long-term effect that I want to mention is that the roots of our California state flag originated from this war. American settlers in the Sacramento River Valley staged a revolt and captured the town of Sonoma, where they proclaimed the independence of the Bear Flag Republic. This fact is represented by the image of the grizzly bear on the flag and the words California Republic, paying direct homage to the state's independence. An interesting story that my groupmates and I read to learn more about the war was the story The Squatter and the Dawn, written in 1885 by someone named Maria Amparo Ruiz de Burton. This book addressed the struggle of Mexican Americans after the war and specifically described the struggles of those promised property protection under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. It also addressed such themes as the consequences of disenfranchisement, dual nationality, manifest destiny, faulty and inadequate legislation, corrupt courts, corporate monopoly, race, class, gender, and interracial marriage. My groupmates and I all agreed that this book was a 7 out of 10. In other words, not a bad read, even though we thought that the book was slow at times. In any event, if you want to learn more about the life of Mexicans after the Mexican-American War, we highly recommend you to read this book, if only to truly understand what it feels like to lose everything. More than that, if you read this book, you'll better understand APUSH Key Concept 5.22c, which states that U.S. government interaction and conflict with Mexican Americans increased in regions newly taken from Mexico, altered these groups' economic self-sufficiency and cultures. With that said, today's episode of APUSH Today comes to an end. It's been an honor and a pleasure, though I can't take full credit for this work. My friends and fellow SMHS juniors, Dennis Rui and Evan Kuo, have helped tremendously to make this work possible. In other words, this work has been a true team effort. Other than that, I just want to say thanks for watching, best of luck on this year's exam, and stay healthy. This is Lawrence Chao Wishing you all a great Titan day, and now signing off.